She had told Favor and Ene in a trembling voice that she couldn't take it anymore, that she would rather die than continue. They tried to dissuade her, but her eyes were distant, filled with the kind of resignation that frightened Ene. When Madame Florence realized Aisha was missing from her post, all hell broke loose. She screamed at Yor to find her. Yor drove through the area frantically. Ene and Favor were forced to continue taking clients, even as dread knotted in their stomachs about Aisha's fate. Hours later, just before dawn, Yor found Aisha. She had tried to run to the main road to perhaps flag a taxi or reach a police station, but she was lost and desperate. Yor, along with another enforcer from the syndicate, a burly Nigerian man named Osaro, cornered her near a closed storefront. Ene didn't witness it, but she heard the letter whispers, how Aisha screamed and begged, how Osaro beat her brutally right there on the pavement to teach her a lesson. By the time they dragged Aisha back to the apartment, she was half conscious, her face swollen and bloodied, her breath shallow. Madame Florence was livid. "Stupid girl," she spat, standing over Aisha's limp form on the floor. "I want all of you. This is what happens when you cross me." She delivered a vicious kick to Aisha's side. The girl let out a weak cry, calling up in agony. Ene could no longer hold back. She lunged forward and grabbed Madame Florence's arm, a surge of anger and grief overpowering her fear. "Stop it! You will kill her!" she cried. For her boldness, Ene received a backhand across her mouth. She tasted blood as her lips split. Osaro shoved her away, and she fell against the wall, stunned. Madame Florence sneered. "Maybe that juju oath was not enough for some of you. If anyone else has foolish ideas, remember this sight." She gestured at Aisha, who was now whimpering on the floor. "Yor, lock this one in the spare room. No food for her until I decide what to do." Yor hesitated, looking at Aisha's broken state. "Madam, she needs a doctor," he said quietly. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Madame Florence snapped. "Do as I say, or you want to join her?" Ene, holding her bleeding lip, saw the conflict in Yor's eyes as he carefully picked up Aisha's frail body. Aisha was barely conscious, her eyes rolling back. Favor was sobbing silently beside Ene, her hands clutched in prayer. Yor carried Aisha to a tiny storage room and laid her on a mat. Madame Florence locked the door herself and pocketed the key. "Let her rot for a bit," she said coldly. That night was the worst since Ene's arrival. She and Favor huddled together, crying softly, terrified of what would happen to Aisha and to themselves. "God, have mercy," Favor whispered over and over, clutching a tiny cross pendant around her neck. No one saw Aisha for 2 days. Madame Florence refused to unlock the door, ignoring the weak cries that occasionally came from inside. "Maybe this will teach her," she said, lighting a cigarette casually. On the 3rd day, the cries stopped. Yor finally dared to speak up again. "Madam, please, let me check on her," he urged, voice strained. "If she dies..." "Fine," Madame Florence hissed, throwing the key at her. "Bring her out, that useless thing." When Yor opened the door, a sore smell wafted out. Ene stood behind him, heart in her throat. Aisha lay motionless on the mat, eyes closed. Yor knelt and gently shook her. "Aisha," he called. There was no response. He lifted her into his arms and carried her out to the light. Aisha's face was ashen, lips cracked. Ene touched her forehead. It was cold. "No," Ene whispered. Her worst fear realized. Madame Florence clicked her tongue and muttered, "What a waste." Favor let out a wail, clamping her hand over her mouth. Yor's shoulders trembled as he held Aisha's body. His eyes glistened with tears he couldn't hide. Perhaps he saw in Aisha the same fate that awaited all of them if nothing changed. Madame Florence, annoyed by the scene, backed orders to Yo and Osaro to get rid of the corpse and clean up that room, as if Aisha's life meant nothing at all. They took Aisha away. Ene and Favor were not told where, but Ene suspected they buried her in secret or dumped her somewhere to avoid police attention. Aisha was gone just like that. A young life full of hopes and dreams, snuffed out in a foreign land. That night, Ene could not sleep at all. Grief and rage coursed through her veins. She silently mouthed a prayer for Aisha's soul. Tears wet on her face. In the bunk above, Favor sniffled in the dark. Ene's thoughts also drifted to Yo. She remembered the tears in his eyes as he carried Aisha's body, the way his hands shook, giving her medicine during her fever. Maybe Yo did not have a heart after all, trapped under the weight of whatever had brought him into this evil trade. Clenching her fist, Ene realized she could not continue like this. Aisha's fate had made one thing clear. If she stayed, she might never leave this place alive. Debt or no debt, I must escape or I would die here, she thought. But the oath and the threats, fear, still paralyzed her. In the solitude of her sorrow, Ene finally allowed herself a dangerous sliver of hope. If there was even a small chance to break free, she had to take it. And the only person who might help her was the last person she ever imagined, Yo. Yo sat alone in his small room adjacent to the garage, long after midnight. The events of the past week weighed heavily on him. He buried his face in his hands, but he could not bury the images in his mind. Aisha's lifeless body, Ene's split lip and tear-streaked face as she confronted Madame Florence. The fear and despair that hung over all the girls like a dark cloud. Yo was a man who never imagined his life would come to this. Years ago, he left Ghana in search of better opportunities. France had promised jobs, money, a future. Instead, he fell in with the syndicate when a countryman introduced him to easy work, driving and guarding. At first, he told himself he was just providing security, that the women choose this life. But over time, he saw the truth. The bruises they tried to hide, the sobs he had through thin walls, and now death. Aisha's death shattered whatever excuses he had left. He thought of his younger sister back home in Accra. She could be about Ene's age. The thought of someone treating his sister the way these women were treated made him feel sick. He had to get out. More than that, he felt a tug of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Conscience. He knew if he walked away alone, leaving those girls behind, he might never forgive himself. But he was just one man against a dangerous network. What could he do? A soft knock at his door startled him. For a moment, he feared it was Madame Florence or one of the enforcers. But when he cautiously opened the door, he found Ene standing there. Her face was drawn and pale, the faint bruises from the other day still on her skin. She slipped inside quickly, wringing her hands. Ene, why are you here? If they catch you, Yo whispered urgently, glancing outside before closing the door. Ene's eyes were red-rimmed but determined. I had to talk to you, she said in a low voice. I can't stay here any longer, Yo. I would die if I do. You saw what happened to Aisha. Her voice trembled. Please, if there is any kindness in your heart, help me. I beg you. Yo felt a lump in his throat. He had expected this, perhaps even wanted it. Yet hearing her plea face to face was overwhelming. He stepped back, running a hand over his shaved head. Ene, you don't understand. If we try to run and they catch us, he didn't finish. The consequences would be fatal for both of them. Ene took a step closer. They won't catch us, she said, as if willing it to be true. You know their operations, their schedules. You can find a way. I'll do anything you say. I I just can't live like this anymore. She lowered her voice further. The juju, maybe it will kill me for breaking the oath, but I would rather die trying to be free than live in this hell. Her words echoed Yor's own thoughts. He looked into her eyes. They were filled not just with desperation, but a glimmer of hope that he could not bear to extinguish. He made his decision in that moment. Okay, he breathed. I will help you. Ene gasped softly, hardly believing she had right. You will? Yor gave a single firm nod. Yes, we both need to leave. I can't stay here either. Relief and gratitude flooded Ene's face, and tears slid down her cheeks. God bless you, Yor. God bless you, she whispered, almost collapsing. He gently steadied her, and for a brief moment they embraced, two people bound by suffering, clinging to the promise of escape. They spent the next few days planning in absolute secrecy. Yor wanted Ene to act as normal as possible, to continue obeying Madame Florence without question, so no suspicion would arise. Ene agreed, masking the flicker of hope inside her with the same blank expression she had worn for months. Yor's plan was risky but straightforward. He knew of a late-night flight from Paris to Lagos 2 days from now. He would buy 2 tickets in cash. The hardest part would be retrieving Ene's passport and documents from Madame Florence's locked cabinet. That, and slipping away undetected. Luck seemed to favor them when, the night before their intended escape, Madame Florence announced she would be traveling to another city overnight to handle business. She left Yor in charge of the girls with Osaro, the other guard, keeping watch as usual. This was the window Yor needed. As soon as Madame Florence was gone, Yor sprung into action. Under the guise of routine, he went into her office room, something he was permitted to do, to fetch logbooks or money bags. With trembling hands, he used a metal nail file to pick open the cheap lock on her cabinet. It opened far easier than he expected. Inside were passports and documents in clear bags for each girl. He found Ene's Nigerian passport, along with a small purse containing her ID card and a few personal items Auntie Grace had likely collected during recruitment. He tucked them into his jacket. He also grabbed a bundle of cash, likely part of their nightly earnings, knowing they would need money. That night, Yor drove Favour and Ene to the usual street corner as always. Their flight was just after midnight, and they would need to leave straight from the street to the airport in the van. Yor caught Ene's eyes in the rear view mirror and gave a slight nod. Their silent signal. Ene's heart thundered with both fear and anticipation. Around 10 p.m., Yor pretended to receive a phone call. He spoke loudly enough for Favour to hear, fabricating a story that a client had requested one girl be sent to a nearby motel outside the usual area. He glanced at Ene and made a show of reluctance on the phone. This late? Fine, I will bring her. Hanging up, he turned to Favour and Ene. I need to take Ene to meet a customer, a special request. He said, Favour, you stay here. Osaro will keep an eye on you until I return. Favour looked unhappy to be left alone with Osaro, but she nodded. Ene could barely breathe. She wanted to hug Favour goodbye, but dared not to arouse suspicion with anything unusual. Instead, she simply said, Be safe, my sister. A double-edged farewell that Favour took as routine. Yor led Ene back into the van, and they pulled away from the curb. The moment they turned the corner and were out of sight, Yor pressed his foot on the accelerator. Down, he ordered, so Osaro won't see you if he looks this way. Ene slid down in the seat, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it would burst. They sped through the city streets. The airport was on the opposite end of town. Every red traffic light felt like an enemy delaying them. Ene kept glancing through the back window, terrified they would see Osaro's car chasing them, or that somehow Madame Florence knew, but the roads were dark and empty of any pursuers. At the airport, Yor parked in a far corner of the lot. He handed Ene a scarf and a large coat he had stashed, items he had prepared to change her appearance slightly. "Cover your hair with this," he said. Ene wrapped the colorful scarf around her hair and shoulders. "Walk beside me, head down. Let me do the talking," Yor instructed. Inside the brightly lit terminal, Ene felt exposed and anxious. It was busy even at night, with travelers hurrying to catch red-eye flight. To her surprise, Yor guided her not to the main check-in, but to a self-service kiosk, where he retrieved their boarding passes that he had booked online earlier. He then led her straight to security, bypassing the check-in counter, meant no one scrutinized their documents at length. At the immigration control, an officer looked at Ene's passport and frowned at the visa page. Her visa had indeed expired months ago. "Her visa has expired. You have overstayed your visa," he said. Ene's heart nearly stopped. She didn't understand all these words, but she could guess. "Please, I'm going home," she said in English, her voice quavering. Yor quickly intervened in English. His Ghanaian accent, earnest and polite. "Officer, we are returning to our country. We have some issues, but we just want to leave France." He met the officer's gaze steadily. "No plans to come back, sir, we promise." The officer looked at the very young woman and the man beside her. After a tense pause, he exhaled and stamped the passport. He muttered about procedures and that she might be flagged if she ever tried to return to France. But at last, he waved them through. Only when they were finally past immigration did Ene realize she had been holding her breath. She wanted to cry in relief. Yor gave her a reassuring nod, though his own hands were shaking slightly as they picked up their small carry-on, just one bag Yor had prepared with a few clothes and water. They boarded the plane just as final calls were echoing through the airport. Sliding into the airplane seat, side by side, they exchanged a glance of disbelief. It felt surreal. Minutes later, as the plane taxied and lifted off, the lights of Paris glittered below. Ene let out a sob she had been holding in, covering her mouth. Yor placed a gentle hand on her back as she cried silently, tears of both joy and grief. She was leaving behind a nightmare, but also leaving behind favor and others whose fates were uncertain. Midway through the flight, after Ene had cried herself into an exhausted sleep against the window, Yor stared out in the darkness of the sky. He felt a weight slowly lifting off his soul. He had done something right, perhaps the first truly right thing in years, but he also knew the danger wasn't completely over. He worried for favor and even for himself. Madame Florence would be furious. He doubted the syndicate would chase him to West Africa, but one could never be sure. He decided once he saw Ene safely home, he would head to Ghana and lay low. In the dim cabin, Ene woke and looked at Yor. For the first time in months, her eyes held a spark of life. "Thank you," she whispered. Yor managed a small smile. "Don't thank me yet," he said softly. "Thank me when you are home, truly home, safe with your family." Ene nodded and then, with hesitation, voiced a fear that had been gnawing at her. "Yor, the oath I took, I'm breaking it. They said I would die if I disobeyed or ran." Her hand unconsciously touched the scars on her back. "I'm scared, even now." Yor took a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I know those juju oaths are powerful in your mind," he said gently. "But remember what you told me. You would rather die free than live enslaved. You have your faith in God, don't you?" She nodded, clutching the little Bible, which she had managed to retrieve from her bag. "Hold on to that," Yor continued. "Believe that God is stronger than any curse. You survived so much already. If the juju hasn't killed you yet, maybe it has no power compared to your will to live." Ene absorbed his words, then sighed. "I pray you are right." She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer under her breath, asking God for protection from any evil and thanking him for this chance at freedom. Yo watched her and quietly added his own prayer, something he hadn't done in years. In that silent moment, two broken souls flying high above the Sahara Desert found a silver of peace. The sun was setting by the time the bus from Lagos rumbled into Benin City. As the familiar sight of home came into view, the red earth, the roadside sellers hawking plantain and groundnut, the chaos of Okada motorcycles weaving through traffic, Ene felt a lump in her throat. I am home, she thought, tears of relief filling her eyes. After everything, she was back in Nigeria, back in her own state, alive. Yo helped her off the bus at the busy depot. The air was thick and warm, filled with the cacophony of shouting drivers and blowing horns. It was overwhelming yet comforting in its familiarity. Ene had called her mother from Lagos, using a borrowed phone at the motor park to give a brief cryptic message. Mama, I'm coming home. Please don't worry. I will explain when I arrive. Her mother had been shocked, sputtering with questions, but Ene had only repeated that she was on her way. Now, standing on the cracked pavement outside the bus terminal, Ene suddenly felt nervous. Would her family accept her after all that happened? She had left full of promise and returned with nothing but scars and sorrow, shame and fear ignored at her. They hired a taxi to take them the final stretch to her neighborhood. Yo remained by her side, carrying her mega bag. As the taxi navigated the narrow, dusty lane leading to her house, Ene spotted a small crowd out front. Word had spread quickly. Her family and neighbors had gathered. Her mother was at the forefront, craning her neck anxiously. The moment the taxi stopped, Ene stepped out. Mama, she cried, voice breaking. Ene, oh my God, Ene. Mama Efe rushed forward and enveloped her daughter in a tight embrace. She was sobbing openly, holding Ene as if she would never let go. Ene clung to her mother, tears streaming down her face. Over her mother's shoulder, she saw Osaz and Efe, now taller and leaner than when she left, joining the hug. Their faces wet with tears too. Neighbors murmured in surprise and joy, some clapping at the reunion. To them, a daughter returning from abroad, even unexpectedly, was cause for celebration. They assumed she had made it big or at least done well. Yo hung back respectfully until Ene gently took her mother's hand and turned towards him. Mama, this is Yo, she introduced softly. He's the one who helped me come home. Mama Efe, eyes swollen from crying, reached out and clasped Yo's hands in gratitude. Thank you, my son, she said earnestly. God will bless you. You brought my daughter back to me. Yo shook his head humbly. Ma, I could not leave her there. She's like a sister to me now. Everyone moved inside the small family compound. Curious faces peered in through the doorway, and a few close friends of the family slipped in too. Ene was exhausted, but she could see the questions in her mother's eyes. Mama Efe guided her to sit on a stool. You are so thin, my dear. Have you eaten? Are you hot? She fused over the bruises on Ene's face and arms, lightly touching a scar near her jaw. Ivie, her friend from next door, was among those gathered. Ivie placed a hand on Ene's shoulder gently. Ene, I thank God you are back. We are all worried when we didn't hear from you for months. Ene looked around at the expectant, loving faces of her family and friends. Emotion swelled in her chest. I will explain everything, she said quietly, voice trembling. But first, please, I need to rest a little. Mama Efe immediately shooed the others. Yes, let her rest. You people can come back tomorrow. She wiped her eyes and managed a smile for the onlookers. Thank you for welcoming her. We will talk later. Reluctantly, the small crowd dispersed, each offering words of welcome and patting Ene's back in support. Ivie squeezed Ene's hand before leaving, worry etched on her face. Yo helped Osaz carry a mattress into the main room for himself. insisting he could sleep there or even outside. But Mama Efe insisted he take the spot of honor and sleep in the room with Osaz. "You are our guest and our helper," she said firmly. That night, after a modest meal of cornmeal and vegetable stew that Mama Efe hurriedly prepared, Ene finally sat down with her immediate family and Yo. By the light of a single bulb, the power had mercifully came back on. Ene took a deep breath. It was time to tell her story. She began haltingly at first, describing how Auntie Grace had tricked her with promises of a boutique job in France. As she recounted the oaths at the shrine, her mother gasped, covering her mouth. "They made you do that?" Mama Efe exclaimed. Tears rolled down Ene's face as she continued, telling of her arrival in Paris, the moment she learned of the 50,000 euros debt, and the kind of work she was forced into. At this, her mother let out a loud sob and pulled Ene into her arms, as if to shield her from those memories. My God, her mother cried. Osaz punched the wall in anger, and young Efe started to cry without fully understanding, only knowing her sister had been hurt badly. Yo quietly added details when Ene could not, describing how the traffickers operated, how many girls were trapped under Madame Florence. But Aisha lost her life. He spoke of the brutality of that world, his voice thick with remorse. The family listened in stunned horror and grief. Ivie had slipped back during the conversation and now sat in a corner, tears streaming down her face as she heard the truth of what her best friend had endured. It took a long time for Ene to finish her tale. By the end, everyone was crying. My daughter, I'm so sorry, Mama Efe kept repeating, rocking Ene in her arms like a child. If I had known, God could punish that Auntie Grace wherever she is. Ivie sniffled and said, I used to envy you, Ene. I wished it was me going abroad. I never knew it was like this. She shook her head, anger and sorrow in her eyes. We have to spread the word. This is happening to many girls. Yo nodded solemnly. There are many still out there. I regret every day I was part of it. I'll be giving the authorities all the information I have on the network. He had already decided to speak to the anti-trafficking agency through a contact the local pastor provided after hearing Ene's story. That night, Ene slept in her own home for the first time in half a year. It was not the triumphant return she had once imagined. There were no riches, no gifts, no tales of success, but she was surrounded by those who loved her, and for a moment she felt safe. Yo stayed up a while, sitting outside under the Nigerian sky, keeping watch out of habit. The humid air buzzed with crickets. He looked at the stars, whispering a prayer of thanks that they had made it this far. In the weeks that followed, Ene became a quiet beacon in her community, with Yo and Ivie by her side. She spoke at the local church and to a small women's group, bravely recounting her ordeal to warn other young women about the dangers of false promises. People listened with rapt attention and moist eyes. Human trafficking was a whispered reality in Benin City, but putting a familiar face to it made it painfully real. Ene's voice was soft but steady as she urged parents to be cautious and girls to be vigilant. Not all that glitters is gold, she said. I went looking for a dream and found a nightmare. Please, learn from my story. Her testimony reached the ears of local authorities. Officers from NAPTIP, Nigeria's anti-trafficking agency, came to take her statement. With Yo's help, she provided names, descriptions, and any details she remembered about Auntie Grace and Madame Florence's network. The officials assured her they would investigate and work with international agencies to find the traffickers. Ene nodded, hopeful that justice might come and that Favor and others still trapped might eventually be saved. Yet, even as hope bloomed around her, Ene's health was failing. The illness that had begun in France clung to her. Some days, she was too weak to leave her bed. She developed a persistent cough and night sweats. The local doctors was puzzled. Tests for the usual tropical diseases came back negative. They suspected her immune system had been compromised by the severe stress and perhaps an untreated infection. Whispers in the community hinted at a cause. The old woman muttered that the juju oath might be taking its price for being broken. Ene herself sometimes wondered if the cause was real after all. Late at night, when fever turned through her body, she would recall the native doctor's ominous words, "If you ever break this oath, may you die." She prayed fervently for God's mercy and tried to push those thoughts away, but as her sickness lingered, it grew harder to dismiss the fear. Mama Efe cared for her day and night, applying cool clothes to her forehead, spooning pepper soup into her mouth when she was too weak to feed herself. Yo postponed his return to Ghana, staying in Benin City to help the family. He could often be found on the front porch, silently keeping vigil or making trips to the pharmacy for medicine. One humid afternoon, Ene called Yo and her mother to her bedside. Sunlight filtered weakly through the window as Ene struggled to sit up. Her once vibrant eyes were now sunken, her skin peppery. Mama Efe immediately propped her with pillows. "What is it, my love?" her mother asked gently, though her voice trembled with dread. Ene reached out and took her mother's hand in one of hers and Yo's hand in the other. "Mama, Yo," she said softly, "I want to thank you." "Hush, you'll be fine," her mother insisted, though tears filled her eyes. Ene gave a small smile. "I pray so. But if anything happens to me, I need you both to know I don't regret coming home. These last weeks with you, with my family, knowing I'm free, it's worth everything." She squeezed their hands weakly. "Please, continue what we have started. Tell others our story and take care of each other." Mama Efe was openly crying now. "Nothing will happen to you, Ene. I reject it in Jesus' name." She sobbed. "You will get better, my child." Yo's eyes glistened as he nodded firmly. "You will get better. We'll still have to dance at your next birthday, remember?" He attempted with a smile, though his voice shook. Ene closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Amen," she whispered. But that night, her condition worsened drastically. She became delirious with fever. In a panic, the family rushed her to the local hospital. The doctors did all they could, fluids, oxygen, prayers, but as dawn broke, Ene's frail body could fight no more. She passed away with her mother holding one hand and Ivie holding the other. A soft hymn being sung through weeping lips. Yo stood just outside the door, pressing his fist to his mouth to hold in his grief as tears streamed down his face. Ene was buried in a week later in a small cemetery on the outskirts of Benin City. The sky was overcast, as if mourning with the hundreds of people who came to pay respects. News of her story has spread. Representatives from NGOs and even a journalist from Lagos attended. Having been moved by the young woman's courage, they listened as the local pastors spoke of the evils of trafficking and the need to protect the daughters of Nigeria. Mama Efe sat flanked by Osas and Efe, clutching a framed photo of Ene in happier times, her quiet sobs muffled by a black veil. After the funeral, Yo lingered at the graveside long after others left, staring at the red earth that now covered the friend he couldn't save. He placed a small wooden carving, a symbol of protection from his Ghanaian hometown, on the mound of soil. "I am sorry," he whispered, voice cracking. "I promise, I won't let your story die, Ene." As he turned to leave, he saw Ivie and the journalist talking quietly. Ivie's eyes were swollen from crying, but there was determination in her voice as she said, "We must continue telling her story. Maybe it will save someone else." The journalist nodded, jotting notes, mentioning something about an article and pushing authorities for action. In that moment, you realized that Ene's journey was not truly over. Every person who had heard her story, her family, her friends, the officials and reporters, now carried a part of it with them. The fight against the traffickers who destroyed her life would go on, fueled by the truths she had bravely shared. Ene had dreamed of a better life, and though she met a tragic end, her voice would live on as a warning and a call to action. As Yo walked away under the grey sky, he allowed himself one last glance upward. "Thank you, Ene," he murmured, imagining her free from the pain at last. "Your light continues to shine." The wind carried a gentle warmth, almost like a response, a final farewell, and perhaps the beginning of another story yet to unfold. Moral lesson: the aspiration for a better life should never cloud our judgment or make us ignore the signs of danger. Ene's story teaches us that not every opportunity abroad is genuine, and many promises of quick success come with hidden traps. It is important to ask questions, seek trusted advice, and be patient with life. Parents must listen to their children, and community must speak up and protect each other. The story also reminds us that healing, justice, and redemption are possible even in darkness, and that our voices, no matter how broken, can still shine light and save others. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Ene on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with her journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V. And do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.